Welcome! This is the Jesan Sorrells audio experience. My name is Jesan Sorrells. Look, we are trying something different, so I want you to join us on the Jesan Sorrells Presents audio experience for interviews, for rants, for raves, for thoughts, for process, and you'll get a knee-deep, hip-deep, and ear-deep view inside of what I do. Look, if you like what you're listening to, please like me, please rank me, Stitcher, iTunes, Overcast, Google Play Music, everywhere where you get your groove on. I want you to give me a few stars. All right, now, let's head into the experience.
Hello. Normally, I put the ad reads at the back end of the podcast so that you can hear the good stuff and not have to listen to me shill pointlessly for 2 minutes. And just so you know, I do this intentionally in our production because even I object to commercials as much as the next podcast listener. However, at this moment, I would ask that you indulge me because I've got a book coming out on April 30th, 2022 on Amazon, and I'd like you to go ahead and place your order right now. The book's title is 12 Rules for Leaders, the Foundation for Intentional Leadership, and it's a collection of 13 essays on leadership. In the book, I address the 12 leadership areas that we have found leaders need to be the most effective in, and then I throw in an extra essay there at the back end. From establishing a foundation of leading teams through managing conflict effectively, all the way through leading teams through change, knowing what to do and why to do it, I believe can help you become a better leader. This book wasn't written just over the course of the last 2 years, and this isn't another fly-by-night leadership development book, here today and gone in the wind in the next month. 12 Rules for Leaders represents a continuation of the work we've been doing here at HSCT Publishing with our leadership training and development products and services, from Leadership Toolbox to Leading Keys, and it also represents the distillation of lessons we've learned, absorbed, and transmitted to others from training and developing around 15,000 managers and supervisors over the course of the last 10 years. This is no slouch of a book, but it's written in an easy to understand and easy to read direct format with practical tips that you can implement today, no matter your leadership problem, your leadership situation, or your leadership circumstances. It's kind of like getting coaching from me directly without having to pay my full coaching rate. I fundamentally believe that this is the book right now, for right now, because leaders like you are positioned to do great work during the truly revolutionary times we are living in, well, right now. And sometimes you need a book as a guide to help you through the work. So head on over to leadershiptoolbox.us and scroll down the homepage. Click on the link and add your name to the pre-order list for 12 Rules for Leaders, the Foundation for Intentional Leadership. And look for the book in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle format on Amazon on April 30th, 2022. By the way, we'll be talking about the rules in 12 Rules for Leaders in our podcasts, both the long and the short, throughout the months of May and June, so you don't want to miss out on that. And well, that was 3 minutes. So that's it for me. Lower left-hand side. Move your cursor over there. It says mute.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. I can hear you now.
Is that okay now?
That's good. That's good. And you know what? You've got the good up lighting, or no, you got the good side lighting, and we're looking up at you. So I mean, that's good.
That is all intentional. I promise. and I know you will believe me when I say that I've been trying to get on just for like the last 7 minutes. I've been prepared, but it's just not in,
This is why we just started talking. I was like, I can't do a whole like prep thing with him. Let's just go. We're going to do a Marin thing. We're just going to start talking and you're like, are we recording this? Yes, we started recording.
Better. So, I set an alarm for 9:15.
Yeah.
Got up, popped up fine, slugged down some coffee, take medication. But it's like, I'm going to need to eat because Mondays I usually, I don't want to say starve myself, It's kind of a fast.
Okay, yeah, intermittent fasting.
But
because that's all the rage, like with people now, the intermittent fasting.
it just always happened on Mondays, being in the food service industry, because I would work like a billion hours, Friday through Sunday, and then it's so many hours, I mean, bowel movements are an enormous part of my existence. And so just for like the last like 10 or 12 years, I have Mondays off and I just go, you know what? I just have to get through this shift. I just need to get to Monday.
We're not cutting that. that makes it into the podcast.
And then Monday rolls around and I wake up and I just try and get as much like greens and fiber in my body as possible. And I just pound prunes and greens and like edamame and I just try and take as many shits as possible. And like that's kind of like what works for me on Mondays. And so
and this is why this podcast is going on the Jesan Sorrells audio experience, not our, more august brand. This is raw, and we can be raw, we can be real here. We can just talk about stuff, and yeah, like I said, that's gonna make the cut. So I'm not hyper concerned about it. I have 5 questions, and that's it.
Jeez, oh man, it's amazing. Well, it's
just 5.
I mean, yeah. Well, and it's just like if I were to ask, have you seen Kevin Smith's Too Fat for 40?
No, I stopped following that dude. Oh gosh, probably about 15 years ago. Like I have no idea what he's doing now. I figure he's just like in New Jersey somewhere, hanging out in a basement. Kind of full circle from the 90s. He kind of came all the way back to his Clerks existence, which is his baseline. And I didn't pay too much attention to him after that.
I think that's what he's doing.
He's doing like Clerks 35 or whatever.
Well, so I don't know if I told you, and I have images of it somewhere, but who cares? My brother's house in the Atlantic Highlands is 2 blocks from the store where Clerks was filmed. Okay.
All right.
And so I would take the Hudson Trail and you get to a particular point and you just look to the right and there's the Clark store and there's like there is images from Kevin Smith's universe and Clerks and that sort of thing. And when I left, they were filming, so they had all that shit blocked off. I don't know what they were filming. Like you said, Clerks 37 and
yeah, something. It's the Netflix series for Clerks. I don't know, or the Hulu. Actually, that would be on Hulu because there's nothing more exhilarating than critiquing the the successes of others. What the hell? Why not?
Yeah.
So we've moved through several things here just in the first like 3 minutes. From mundane food service to bowel movements to Clerks and Kevin Smith. No, what was your point about old Kevin? What's he doing? Fat at 40 or fat after 40 or I'm about to be 50 or whatever the heck that thing is called.
He was, I believe the title came from when he was kicked off the airline because he was too fat for the seat.
I vaguely remember that.
And
I remember somebody was like complaining about it on social or something, some social
he was like
media
hanging
somewhere.
into the other seat.
Yeah.
And excuse me.
No, he had too much success. Like that's kind of what happens.
And
that's why I roll jujitsu now. I don't want to have too much success.
But
I also want to get armbarred by a 27-year-old former wrestler. So I mean, there's also that.
Well, you want to?
Yeah, sure. Why not? What else am I going to do with my day?
Yeah, I want to be tased. I want to know what it feels like to be shot.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that might be a little. I'm serious. I've had this fascination, but the Too Fat for 40 thing, like he put this out on maybe Netflix or something or whatever, and so it starts. It basically the outline of the program is the audience asks questions and he answers them.
Okay.
And an audience member asks one question, and then he answers it, and he speaks for a full hour answering that one question. And he closes the answer with like, yeah, so that's how I met Bruce Willis.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. I mean, that's our podcast culture come full circle then. I mean, you ask one question and then 40 minutes later you get to the next question, and by the time you get there, we're done. Guess we got to close the hour. Congratulations, you wasted an hour on that.
Well, for me, it kind of like it brings the attention to things like entertainment, sort of versus like stand-up comedian versus entertainment.
Okay.
Performance versus improv.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I can see where you would get there from that. Yeah, because you know what? I mean, in general, those two things are kind of together, but they're like at two different extremes. Like there's a line there. It's not a confluence, it's a line. There's no overlap. So, and of course, everybody's performing now. Like we're performing right now. Maybe more honestly than other folks, but like we're putting on a show. I mean, there's a show, And I tell this to people often, like Sinatra. Number one, Sinatra would have hated social media. He'd been like, "Screw all you guys," and he would have like run away. But he often said that and a lot of old school performers got this. You talk about performance versus improv. A lot of old school performers got this. The only thing that I owe you is a good time. I don't owe you my life. I don't owe you my decisions or who I hang out with. I don't owe you a justification or an explanation for why I got divorced like 35 times and have a drug addiction. F you. I don't care. Go away. And that is the attitude among many was the attitude among many old school performers. I think probably, I read the other day somewhere that Dolly Parton turned down like being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She was like, yeah, I don't need that. Thank you, but go away. I don't deserve it. She was very nice. She was like, because she's Dolly Parton. She's like, I don't deserve it. And she put like a written like note on Instagram. I love people who like use the visual mediums to write things, to write narrative. I love that. You do that on your Instagram. That's genius. I love it because you're subverting the entire platform that way. And so she's like using it like a blog or whatever. And she's like, oh, I'm Dolly Parton and I don't want to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And thank you for this honor and goodbye. And I'm just sitting there thinking, number one, because she's like 75, 80, something like that. So like she's a throwback to that earlier era of, yeah, I'm Dolly Parton. Yes, I am an enhanced woman and I've been enhanced for a while and that's not interesting. And go away. I love that. I love that sense of just like go away. But younger generations don't have that because they've been raised in the abattoir of like performance. So everybody's a performer now.
Well, I remember you saying a few years ago along the lines of, this was. I mean, I was either in Asheville or maybe even in Portland. Because that's when we first reconnected.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about Regio and that sort of thing. And how you said something along the lines of like YouTubers and having that access to like the immediacy, and you can like craft your popularity or fame or kind of curate, in a way. And and it was great because you left it open-ended in a way that I was to sort of like plug in the answer.
Yeah.
And that's always dangerous.
Yeah, it always is.
and you said something about, YouTube and I don't even, so I think the thing is, I don't even think you mentioned YouTube. I think you said something along the lines of like, the like advent of social media and its access, and if those things had come out, say, or the access to those things had come out when we were at Burlington County Community College.
Oh yeah.
You said, I know what we would be doing right now.
Oh, for sure. Please.
And just that was it. And so it was like there was no like what we would be doing. It was just like, I know what we'd be doing. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, shit, what were we doing? He's right, but I don't know what it is.
We'd all have our own Netflix shows by this point. Staying next to Kevin Smith somewhere. We would, again, completing the circle, just completing the circle. But
3 dudes in a basement.
There you go. That's actually probably a podcast. That's the next podcast brand: 3 dudes in a basement. God. Well, okay. So we haven't done this in a while. So for our listeners, the people who are listening, they have no idea who Ryan Stout is. They have no idea what Ryan Stout's been doing or why we're talking to Ryan Stout. So kind of flesh out for the people a little bit about where you came from and who you are. Tell us a little bit about your parents. I'm going to do the Mark Maron interview thing. So tell me about your, I'm going to get real close to the mic the way he does. So tell me about your dad. He does that NPR whisper. Stop it, Mark.
Is it? Yeah. It's is it developed over time?
It has developed over time.
Kind of like, is it like an emotional? It's like I'm trying to think of like those things that you're walking through the brush,
mm-hmm.
and they're like you got all these sticky things on you with like little burrs.
Oh,
and it's like to kind of like hook the
Texas
the
is full
listener
of them.
In.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
My
kid hates them. My 5-year-old is like, get the hell out of town. I hate these things. And he's 5. Even he knows now. He's like, no, I don't want to be stuck.
And that's well, I can from the brief interactions that I've had with him, I could see him saying like, I don't want to be stuck.
No, I have zero interest in any of that.
I don't want to do that.
It seems arbitrary and quite silly.
Why do they do this?
All right, tell about your dad. Tell us about your dad. It's been a while since we've even talked about this.
Born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey. Born in 1978, January. Capricorn, for whatever that means. People seem to like it. And my father and mother, it's interesting. A lot of things aren't kind of revealed until you're an adult through your parents. I mean, when you're a kid or when I was a kid, I'll keep it on I statements. I will apply 20 years of being in therapy into the podcast, because it is one of the things that I notice during interviews when people, and this is a real potentially shitty statement to say, what is it when I see people in interviews or hear people in interviews answering with you versus the people who answer with I statements? It's like, oh, you've had some movement towards self-actualization, or you've had a therapist who really drilled home to keep the shit on you, meaning I. So, and I didn't realize until, when I was a kid, we lived in this apartment, which I didn't know was an apartment. I thought it was just a house, and it was sizable, and it had stairs, and it was upstairs, but years later, it wasn't revealed really to me. That my grandmother actually owned the house, the building. And I didn't know that Jerome, my grandfather, who my middle name is after, I didn't know that he and my grandmother had purchased that as like as a real estate. Not real estate. I don't know if it's real estate, but it's as a property, as a source of income. and it just made me think like, oh wow, like there was like a foresight there. And
yeah, Jerome was putting it forth in whatever way he was putting it forth. What did Jerome do?
he was
I don't think I ever asked you about your grandfather. What did your grandfather do?
well, he died in 1976, 2 years before I was born, of
So
esophageal.
you just got the
esophageal cancer.
Okay.
And he was a writer, and eventually was the I get whatever what's the head editor?
Head editor
Of the
editor-in-chief.
editor-in-chief of the Trentonian.
Oh, okay. So that's where you got the writing book from. Like it skipped a generation and landed on you.
Back when the Trentonian was like a legitimate paper.
Yeah. Well, that was like back in the day when like you could actually get local news.
Yeah, they went to a place called Choquette's, which is this bar, and kind of like the beginning of the Berg, Chambersburg, and my grandmother's house. I believe you may have been there once.
I probably was. But it's been like 20 years ago.
If not more. We're getting old, bro.
Yeah. I'm old. We're old. Well, keep it to I'm going to keep it to I statement. I'm old.
I too am older-ish. And it was the behind, it was a Quinton Avenue, and it was on the street behind the athletic fields of Trenton High is where my grandparents' house was. When World War II went down, when the United States made a decision to enter the war, he signed up immediately. And
but all those guys did.
Yeah. And well, maybe not immediately. Or was the draft was only for Vietnam, right?
Draft was only for Vietnam because Pearl Harbor happened and everybody just queued up. Like they were like, forget that. But like our grandparents and our great grandparents were different. They were different people. Like they were farmers and stuff. They were like, my great grandfather was a sharecropper who had like 12 kids, and of those 12 kids, I think 5 or 6 were sons, and all of them served in World War II. And it was like, why are you in World War II? You're black in America, and your father's a sharecropper who could barely write his own name, and he's a step away from chattel slavery. And they all had the attitude, and this is the attitude I was raised with as a person of color, whatever the hell that means now, in America. Where else are we going to go? Like, this is the Alamo. Like what? Like, give me a break. Like if they come over here, it's going to be a problem. So I'd rather play away games than home games. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, in that context, it's,
but it was everybody. Like nobody, even the women, like nobody didn't go do something. It wasn't like it wasn't like Iraq where like less than 1% of the available male population serves, and of that less than 1%, I think it's less than half of that 1% actually went to Iraq and Afghanistan. Like you have multiple generations now since the end of Vietnam that just don't know anybody who ever served in the military. Like they have no clue, now there's concentrations that are higher. So like the South and, the West, they send a lot of people into military service, a lot. In the Northeast, California, Midwest too, a little bit more, but the Northeast, no one's going from the Northeast. If you're a 19-year-old guy in New York City, you got other concerns than going to some desert shooting some guy you never heard of.
Yeah, man, you got to influence.
Right. Yeah. You got to find a way to get on, be a producer or a gopher on that Netflix show with Kevin Smith, so you can stand next to him.
I just had this vision. It's just like it's Kevin Smith, kind of like in a basement, and then like whenever the other person's time, it's sort of is time to go full circle. They they just knock on the basement door. And then, Kevin's like, oh, you're done? He said, you come on in. And it's just like, dozens of dudes and women wearing tutus and shit with makeup and they're applying makeup and
pouty lips.
Yeah,
doing the whole Kim Kardashian thing. Anyway, that's where our culture is now. So Grandpa went to World War II.
Yeah,
worked for the Trentonian.
So he wanted to be a doctor.
Oh, okay.
And
how ironic that he died of esophageal cancer then.
He went to war and he flew bombers.
Okay.
And I always thought it was pretty impressive to be a pilot, especially navigating a piece of machinery like that, considering like if I jump too high, I'm scared of heights. You know what I mean?
Well, and even the casualty rate of those guys was huge. It was huge because like the bombers were, you were cranking them out, but they were shoddy, particularly in the first couple of years. It got better towards the end there when we were flying over the Pacific, but even there, I remember reading something one time that the casualty rate for World War II bombers over Germany or over Japan at the beginning was something like 80%.
So the planes became the actual.
Oh, they were death traps.
The ammunition.
Yeah, they were literal death traps, and particularly the reason they built the B-17 Super Fortress. The reason they built that sucker was because it was big enough to not need to be refueled. If I remember correctly, I think it was the B-17. Yeah, it was big enough to not need to be refueled, and you could fly. And this is why the Marines went island to island in the Pacific, because they were trying to set up. And this is going to come back to bite us in the butt later on with Taiwan, but I'll leave that aside for a minute because we're not going to discuss geopolitics today. But this is going to come back to bite us in the butt because the Chinese also experienced World War II, just from the opposite end of the spectrum. Anyway, the reason we island hopped in World War II was because you needed to have landing fields and takeoff fields that were close enough for those B-17s to fly over, Tokyo, and drop napalm and drop bombs and all that kind of stuff. Because, again, our grandfathers were different. They didn't really care too much. Well, number one, CNN didn't exist. And number two, they didn't really care what CNN was going to say about them anyway.
Chain of command, we got to get this shit done.
You got to get exactly. I mean,
and a sense of urgency, I would guess, because that was at least in like modern day era, no one had ever gotten close to the United States in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so,
and that's why Truman dropped the bomb. Like the numbers they gave him for Operation Olympic, people don't. You can Wikipedia Operation Olympic if you're interested and you're listening. But like the numbers that they gave him would have dragged out the war to like 46, 47. The Russians would have come in, and then you would have had like 20 years of warfare for sure, because the Russians weren't going to go anywhere, and they had two wars that they lost back to back against the Japanese in the early 19th century, or no, not early 19th century, the late 20th century. I'm sorry, not late 20th, the late 19th century. They lost two wars back to back, the Russo-Japanese War number 1 and Russo-Japanese War number 2. The Japanese just embarrassed them. And they were like, oh yeah, we have historical memory. We're going to work this out with you people. And so there would have been a pincher movement on Japan, and Stalin, where, what was it, something like 30 million Soviets died repelling the Germans. He was like, let's see how much we can empty out America. You all go and die. And Truman was unwilling to do that. So he's like, oh, we just got to drop these 2 experimental bombs and they'll burn a bunch of people's faces.
Experimental.
Where do I sign up? And I don't want to pretend like Truman was cavalier about it. I read the David McCullough book about him, and Truman was a fascinating president. He was probably the last, I wouldn't say last, probably, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, the last genuinely decent dude who was actually trying to look out for the world order and wasn't driven by like television the way Kennedy was, or just raw power the way Nixon was, or being perceived as a cowboy and an actor the way Reagan was, or being driven by venal political pursuits the way that every other politician has been since William Jefferson Clinton moving forward. And yes, I will go on record with that. You all can come for me if you would like. And we can discuss president by president if you would like. But anyway, like Truman was I think Truman was probably the last decent dude. The dude went back to running his haberdashery. Like he went back to running his hat shop in St. Louis after he was president.
That's there's something more admirable in that act than really it's like a demarcation from, okay, this is a call of duty in a sense to this public, or this as a public servant. And when I'm finished my responsibilities, I will return to the thing. And so instead of like enmeshing all of the extraneous or kind of things that come along with being a politician, especially a president, he's not, he didn't roll it over into charging $3 million to give a speech at, a Beam Porcelain, to show them, or this is how you run a business. Like, we've been in business since 18, like we do. We don't need, you're just hiding money. Like it's, So that's what my grandfather, 12 successful missions. I believe he needed 17 successful missions to be to complete your turn. It's like after 17, they'd be like, okay, you've done your duty.
Oh yeah, okay.
And so I think he did 12, and then the war ended.
Okay, yeah. He was probably relieved.
And he was. It's interesting. I had this conversation with therapists or really whoever, anyone I'm kind of like getting to know in kind of like a real way, because I've as you know, I mean, depression is a very real thing for me, and so people will comment like, wow, you're really well read and you're smart and blah 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 and this and that, and like, so what are your parents or your brother and sister? And we just kind of getting to know. It's like, well, I got from my grandfather the tall, thin, and smart,
right?
Crippling depression and a drug and alcohol habit that wants to sacrifice me at every and any moment. They don't read so good,
right?
But they have really nice houses and careers and jobs and families. Mm-hmm. And I've lived in a studio in Cincinnati. So, I mean, what's the
right? What's the trade-off here?
What's the trade-off, and that might be, I don't know if that's like paying homage to Occam and his dang razor and the reductionist, but it just seems, I don't know, that after 44 years of being in this corporal shell, it seems to make good sense. Because despite my best efforts, it's I mean, there's been many a dark night of the soul of like going like, what is fundamentally completely broken about me that it is, and which I am honored and glad that you scheduled and asked me to talk, because pretty recently there was, as I sent that text to you, there's been a pretty recent movement in whatever progress that is personally. So my grandfather was an editor at Trentonian, and he was a beer drinker, quiet, stoic from what my grandmother and mother have told me, like stoic to the letter, and never raised his voice. But when he spoke, like fucking listened. And
He was the E.F. Hutton of the family.
And I would be lying if I said I knew who that was.
Right. That's okay. I know who E.F. Hutton is. I make all of these cultural references on the podcast to like old things or things that I know because I have like all these random threads in my head, and it's fine. Nobody else knows. You can Google it.
No, yeah, well, I gotta write it down. You know what I mean? I'm an information whore.
Yeah, they had a great series of commercials back in the day. I think they were like a financial advisory group or a bank or something like that. And the commercials basically said, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. And then there was like silence in the commercial. It was like back in the 70s or something that these ran. And that's the kind of the dynamic you're talking about there, where like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then like something cuts through the noise that you absolutely have to pay attention to because, it's significant and important. I think that was the point of that ad campaign. Or it could just have been really clever David Ogilvy advertisement. And I do like that guy.
I know who that is.
Yeah. I think everybody knows who that is. Okay, so what did your mom? Not your mom, but your grandma? Who was hooking up with this dude and making babies with him?
Yeah, Olga Terlecki. My grandfather's name was Jerome Persian McCarthy, 100% Irish. Grandma Olga Anna Terlecki, Ukrainian. And so,
okay.
How her mother, my great grandmother, got to the country was what is happening between Russia and Ukraine now.
So wait, the Holodomor
is what was happening to precipitate my great grandmother and her husband to move to the United States.
Oh man, snap. Okay, that's a snap.
Yeah, and so there was a big, and there's a disconnection from understanding. I recently there was Oliver Stone was on the Rogan Experience, and I think Joe said something about America's willingness to kind of go into war. And this is something, it seems obvious to me, and I'm sure, and we just talked about it, like with the Pearl Harbor thing. It's like, yeah, because our country has never been a battleground,
right?
In modern weaponry.
Oh yeah, no. Mm-mm.
And so when it's like, go to, the people rally and say, fuck, let's kill everyone, listen to that. It's like, well, you've never had tanks driving down the street, so you may think differently if.
Well, and the reality is, and nobody wants to say this, but the reality is, yeah, China has a 200 million man army, but spread out across the Pacific, they can't hold a country this size. And with what we're seeing in Russia right now, with how their supply lines have fallen apart into Ukraine, and now they're about to get bogged down because history doesn't repeat itself; it just echoes. Welcome back to Afghanistan, my old friend. Unless Putin is a supervillain genius, which I don't think he is, but whatever. And the Ukrainians are a proud people, so they're going to fight. They're not the Georgians. They're not going to. They haven't been like crushed. They're gonna fight. They're gonna fight, led by a reality show president, but they're gonna fight. And so, the reality of geopolitics is this: the oceans have protected us, and that's just a function of geography. And people today like to throw around the word privilege, white privilege, or economic privilege, or male privilege, or whatever the hell. And I reject all that crap. I do. I reject that language entirely, because privilege implies that somehow you had to earn something in order to take the benefit from it. And some things are just given to you. That's it. Who makes the world? Like, who makes the world? We do. And that's that. And then there's other aspects of the world that we don't make. Natural resources. I don't care how much you believe in social justice. You can't create coal. Sorry, you just can't. And you can't create oil, and you can't create geographic distances between countries. You may want to be God, but you're not there yet. And I don't think you're going to get there. So chill out with the privilege talk. But anyway, that's
well, I told Candace what you said about the are you okay? Are you okay? Are you? And I said yes. And I talked to Jesan about that, and because I know you, and I know that you call bullshit.
Oh, for sure.
And so I was like, yeah. I talked to my buddy Jesan, and he said, I'm fine. Just get the hell out of my way.
Right.
And she goes, I like him. I was like, yeah, he's fucking awesome. And so,
well, Andrew McWhorter and John McWhorter and Andrew Yang were talking about John McWhorter's new book, Woke Racism, on his podcast.
I love him.
McWhorter's freaking amazing. I found him like 15 years ago, and I was like, dude, where's this dude been? And I'm fascinated by linguistics, which, you know, makes sense with everything else that you know about me and that I know about myself. And I was listening to him, and he asked Andrew Yang on Andrew Yang's podcast, and it struck me because this is not a question that typically gets asked. He goes, do Asians think very much about what white people, like, do they care what white people are thinking about them? And Andrew Yang actually paused and goes, no, actually we don't really think too much about it, like, at all. Like, it never factors into our thinking. And McWhorter goes, that's how I need to raise my two daughters, who are like 6 and 8 apparently, like, to not just really care. And I thought about it myself, and I'm like, no, the way my mother raised me, the way my father raised me, the way my grandma put stuff, it doesn't really consume me. Like, I'm not walking around here looking for racism underneath every, like, its situation. As a matter of fact, I'm not looking for it anywhere. Matter of fact, when most things happen to me, I usually attribute it to failures that I have had or things that I have not done correctly or whatever, because there's so many things that are within my power. And if I'm worried about all the things that aren't in my power, then all of a sudden I'm letting other people run my life, and I'm too much of a control freak to let that happen.
Well, you are, you are happy, and accept the challenge of being an active participant in your own life.
Well, yeah, in a Kierkegaardian sense, yeah, absolutely.
And when you do that, it becomes almost impossible because of, myriad variables contributing to every movement, essentially. And so to link it to one particular thing, although I'm not saying that racism and all these other social things are non-existent or not contributors of this and that, but there's a lot going on, and that's, the boxer Jack Johnson, mm-hmm. Like, he's watching the Ken Burns, Ken Burns on him, yeah. And it's like he ignored racism.
Oh yeah, he didn't care,
and to a level that it like he transcended that entire dynamic. And he was very much like, now I'm watching it on television and it's a blah, 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 but I don't know, man, and someone sort of, when I made this comment, I was telling, we were talking about this, a drummer mm-hmm. I was talking to, and I was like, yeah, man, he was just like banging like rich, hot Jewish broads. And the dude was like, I like how that's how like he subverted racism, was that. And I was like, well, dude, you gotta you either really have to know what you want, or have some big set of balls, or be free in a way that is transcendent of how most people live their life, in order to even get to the point where you're engaging or have an opportunity, or to be in the same circles as those people.
Oh yeah,
that type of sort of wealth.
Well, like you have to not care. Like, I don't think that I'll name a rich guy in Texas, Elon Musk. If I ever ran into Elon Musk, I'd be like, oh, that's Elon Musk. And I keep right on going. Because he's not coming over here going, oh, that's Jesan Sorrells. I got to go run and meet him. Like, he's not doing that. He ain't never heard of me. Now, the only reason I've heard of him is because his friggin' logo is on every damn car driving around North Central Texas that's electric. But beyond that, I mean, that and a Neuralink, what else do you got for me? Oh, and PayPal. Okay, cool. But, like, what else do you have for me? Like, and maybe it's a function of me graduating high school in, like, 1997. When like none of this was around. Like I'm not impressed by it because I remember when none of you were around. And if I were maybe more, if it were, let's go a generation back. If it were Steve Jobs, you know, who was around when I was around. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll go talk to Steve maybe. I might have something, maybe. But even there, I'm like, he's going to have feet of clay. He's going to be boring. And he's going to want to talk about, like, the next, I don't care about the next iPod thing. I don't even like your products. Like, I'm going away. And I would just slowly wander away because I'm just not interested enough, right? Like, I talk to people that I'm interested in, you know, and I engage with people that I'm interested in. And I like some of Elon Musk's ideas. I'm glad that he's in the world. God bless him. You know, he's doing amazing things. And he doesn't really need, I don't really need to pop up on his radar. Now, if he wants to hire me to work for SpaceX, I will for sure do that because I care about space. For sure. But even then, it's not going to be a sort of master-slave relationship. We've abandoned all of that. You're going to pay me what I'm worth, and I'm worth a lot. And then after you do that, you're going to listen to my advice. And if you don't want to take my advice, I will give you the money back and I will walk away. Because at the end of the day, the people that I need to make excuses for or that I need to justify myself to, Elon Musk is not on that list. Neither is any other rich guy on anywhere or rich woman. They're not on that list. The list of people that I need to justify myself to is extremely tiny and fits on the palm of my hand, to paraphrase Brene Brown. It fits on the palm of my hand. And most of those people, actually all of those people are in this house. And that's it.
What are we doing here?
What are we doing here? Like, we're done. Like, but most people are like, status and power and money and impressions. And then that's where, to full circle, you get politicians running around who've never been in a war before and don't have that list on their hand, talking about, Democrat and Republican, talking about how we got to go to the Ukraine and we got to have NATO no-fly zones and all this kind of nonsense. And I'm just like, give them weapons, for sure. Give them support, for sure. Let their refugees come here, for sure. Open the door. Those are the kinds of people we want to come into here. Are they going to politically vote for the way you want to vote for? Well, you know, that's the risk you run. Whatever. But let them in because we want to make friends with the Ukraine. Because the reality is, if you want to hold this continent and you want to invade it, you're going to have to drop nukes on us first. It's going to be nukes and clear the ground, and then you're going to have to hold it. And good luck with all of that. There are 300 million, 340 million people on this continent, on this country alone. And unless you're going to enter in from from Canada or from Mexico, which good luck with Mexico. That's a failed narco state. Yeah. Drug dealers will cut your head off before you will be able to come in. I mean, you're able to sneak a few things in. I think there's some shenanigans going on at the southern border. We see that with fentanyl and with China. But Canada? Yeah, okay. I mean, it's an empty wasteland. They won't notice you coming. We won't notice you coming anyway. You're going to have to hold, and you still don't have enough people to hold the country. You just don't. And by the way, I looked up the statistic the other day. There's 6 million registered guns in the United States, and there's an estimated, get this, 300 million unregistered. Everybody stay home.
Yeah, stay one home. Gun for everyone.
Just stay home. Just stay home. Y'all just stay home in your own countries, and we'll all be friends.
That's I'd say it's a beautiful thing, and that's what you're saying about the Ukraine. Is like that's it's not irrational confidence, but there is almost like.
It's historical understanding of who you are.
like, this is our, like, dude, we did this before. Fuck you.
Right.
Like, we're not doing it again.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. You're going to come over here and make trouble. I'm going to paraphrase from the movie Tombstone. I love that movie. When Kurt Russell with that giant freaking handlebar mustache says to a fat Billy Bob Thornton, who he's beating in the bar, you go right ahead, you pull that smoke wagon. You go right ahead, you pull that and watch what happens.
You pull that smoke wagon.
That's right. I love that. I tell that to my kids all the time. they're like getting ready to pull some knots. I was like, oh, you go ahead. Pull that smoke wagon, you watch what happens. That's the attitude of the people of the Ukraine. I mean, they went through the Holodomor, for God's sakes. Like, that was a Holocaust that they went through in the 20s and 30s, where the communist regime in Russia was systematically trying to destroy them. I've known people from the Ukraine. I've gone to church with people from the Ukraine. One of my good friends, he's married to a Ukrainian woman. Like, they're proud people. If you go through that, forget it. You're never going to allow anybody to F with you ever again. Like you're saying. So it's done. So give them weapons, give them support. Don't have a stupid no-fly zone. Don't do that, because you get American F-22s shooting down Russian MiGs, and we will shoot down Russian MiGs, because who else is going to patrol the skies over the Ukraine? That's World War III for sure. For sure. That's nukes coming from the sky. For sure. Let's not do that. Let's abstain from doing that. And look, the other factor that we have to consider, and again, I mentioned that whole, like, less than 1% of the American male population served in our most current 20 years of war making, with less than half of that 1% going to Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, that's fine. Those guys are all back. You know, the boys that I'm seeing in the Ukraine, Grozny and Chechnya was a long time ago. Like, you're getting commanders blown up whose last hardcore on the ground people are shooting at each other. We have to, like, you know, deal with that with Chechnya. And Chechnya was almost 20, 25 years ago now. You know, you got some 19-year-old who was born when that ended, and they're in tanks getting burned. I mean, I'm sorry, kid, but they just don't have ground commanders. They don't have the personnel. So military people right now are kind of watching very closely what's happening, and they're kind of surprised by what's happening. But the average 19-year-old now that's in the 82nd Airborne that's stationed in Poland is being commanded by a guy who's like my age, who was in Iraq and did 2 tours in Iraq. It's going to be a totally different kind of game. Totally different kind of game. Better command and control. It just comes from experience. Better command and control. Here's how you hold people together when things are falling apart. Here's how you don't escalate a situation. Here's rules of engagement. All of that. Just better. Because of everything that's happened to us since 9/11. And so that's the silver lining in that deep gray cloud.
Yeah, it's one of those things that most people, I think, would say, you know, why are you taking at some point as a military person just maybe like esoteric classes or trainings and things that most people would say, like, oh, but then you get to, it's like, well, you need to warfare evolve. Everything is evolving simultaneously. The technology of weaponry, the technology of all these communication across the line, and it's like, well, if you don't have kind of like the academic approach to concomitantly grow with that, then.
Oh, and if you want to learn how to beat your enemies, you don't study the American military. If you want to learn how to beat your enemies, you study the American military's enemies. So, like, you study the North Vietnamese, you study the Taliban, you study the Al-Qaeda elements in Iraq that set traps for us in Fallujah. And we had to go in there and use tanks as door knockers. Knock, knock. We're from America. We'd like to help. Like, and I'm making a little bit of light of it, but I mean, that was actually what happened, you know? And so again, the experiences of that in a 43-year-old guy or a 57-year-old guy who's commanding 19 to 24-year-olds is radically different than the experience of a commander who whose last on the ground experience was 25 years ago, and between 25 years ago and now they've just been studying the glories of the Great Patriotic War and getting propaganda from Putin. It's different. You're going to come to different conclusions, and you're going to make war differently, just like you would do in anything else, just like you do on racism or raising a family or whatever. Which, speaking about that, we were talking about your grandma. So let's cycle back to that.
So yeah, she when my great grandmother got old, she moved in with my grandmother and grandfather and the three daughters. And so I believe my mom Sharon and her sister Donna and my mother's the middle, and my Aunt Elaine is the oldest, and Annie Lane had her own bedroom, and then my mother and my Aunt Donna shared a bed in one of the bedrooms. And then when my great grandmother got ill or was nearing sort of the end, I believe all three of them moved into one room. Or my Annie Lane, I think she was like married at 19, so it might have been right around that time. And so my great grandmother lived there, and
so your grandfather lived with his mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my grandmother didn't work. She made all of the clothes for my mother and two aunts.
Nice.
And kind of like very old school in that sense. Everything was, kind of like a DIY, and I've seen some of the dresses that my grandmother made. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful craftsmanship. And after my father passed away in 70, my father, is that a Freudian slip?
Yeah, something.
After my grandfather passed away, it would have been 76. So, I mean, my brother was born 75. So by that time, my Aunt Donna is the youngest. She was married and living in the Philippines with her husband, Jimmy, and my cousin, Laura, who was, like 1 or 2 at the time. And then my mother had Miles in 75, me 78, and my sister 82. And then my Annie Lane had a son, David, my cousin, who's, I think he's 50 now, or 55. 50.
So you got a whole
it's
a whole thing there.
And so after my grandfather passes away, he was smoked cigarettes and drank beer and esophageal cancer or whatever. And he, one of the reasons he refused treatment was he had a friend or a family member or something like that had a similar cancerous something, and he went through the treatments, and my grandfather just watched him just hate life and be more miserable as with each passing day with being, and so he was like, that's it, that's it, I'm done. And so, and then my grandmother, so she's an empty nester, and so she starts working as a secretary at the county clerk, or like in downtown Trenton somewhere in whatever the municipal buildings. And she got the job through one of the neighbors when they were hiring, and said, I'll go. We are looking for this and that. She goes, I don't know how to type. I don't know how to, and she's like, I've been a homemaker for my entire life, and he's like, don't worry about it. And so, and my grandmother being who she is, and she said, I think I typed was, 17 words a minute, and just it was a horrible secretary. And she said, but it was maybe a more conducive environment to I believe there wasn't this sort of never-ending feeling of mobility for every person who worked in every job. So everyone who worked in that building, give or take a few years, and they'd all sort of been through, their husbands or wives had been through the war and like all these, and so like and my grandfather being the editor, the main newspaper, whatever, and so they were like very welcoming in the neighborhood, and like it was a very neighborhood community thing, and so. So her being, let's just say, serviceable at the job was kind of a welcome thing because it served on a much deeper level, something other than a paycheck. It was, and she's wonderful in community settings. So it was, if you have to sacrifice, 25 words a minute on a typewriter for someone who's always going to be early, someone who's going to stay late, someone who's going to do the jobs to the best of their ability and this and that. Granted, it wasn't as big an issue then as I think it is now, but that, and so that was grandma. And then, and she stayed in that house for like 60 years and it kind of became home base. Mm-hmm. So when my Aunt Donna, she just had enough of my Uncle Jimmy in the Philippines. I think he was, I think I met him maybe once or twice. And he was probably philandering around, the island, islands.
Uncle Jimmy was island hopping.
He was, yes. And so I think one day my Aunt Donna just grabbed Laura and, came home. And so Donna and Laura lived there for a while, and then when Aunt Donna got reestablished and got a full-time gig, working, she worked at that place for like 50 years, 40 years or whatever, and then shortly after that, my Aunt Elaine, who has had David, my oldest cousin, and her husband was running around, and so that
what is it with the men in the family?
And so
what is it with the dudes in this family?
And so Elaine and David lived there for a spell, and then years later when my brother he joined the Coast Guard. And when he came back from boot camp, he was stationed in Philadelphia, and he lived in Trenton with my grandmother. And that was a really interesting dynamic that unfolded as a result of that. I always thought, but also my grandmother knew how to sort of like her emotional intelligence, I think, was keen because she knew, like, she treated everyone differently, in the sense that she kind of like almost intuitively knew how to handle whenever any of the grandchildren were sort of upset or whatever. And so when Donna moved there, and then Elaine moved there, they moved back in, and then Miles came back, and then at one point Miles and I were both living there, and then when my mother she was working at St. Anthony's as a teacher for 25 years. The day her school closed for good was the day I OD'd.
Okay.
So she was at her friend. She was living in Bordentown, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And do you remember that apartment?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so she was living in Bordentown, New Jersey, and she was at her best friend from childhood, Kathy's house, around the corner. Yeah. In Bordentown, and was kind of like what am I going to do? I've been a teacher for this blah blah blah, and kind of like just venting and like kind of like licking the wounds in this way. And so on the way home, my sister's pastor, Daryl, calls my mother and says, Sharon, where are you right now? And she says, I'm driving back to my apartment. And she said, well, where do you have someplace you can go? And she says, well, just came from my friend Kathy's. And she said, can you do me a favor? Can you turn around and drive back to your friend's house? And like at that moment, she knew something was up. And so she, and this is great because it's sort of leading into something that will reveal a lot about my father, and that will kind of like tie that in. And so she turns around, she goes back to Kathy's house, and Daryl's like, your son overdosed. He's stable. He's in a coma. And can you get down here? And so she called my father, and they flew down immediately. And I was in a coma for about a week, and was on kidney dialysis and a feeding tube and the whole nine. And when I come out of coma, though, I see it's like my mother and my sister, and there was like a family friend there, and my brother, and there's another couple, other people sort of in and out. And I said, and I guess I didn't notice until like a couple days after, and be like, oh, wow, like awesome. My dad's not here. That's like good. It probably wouldn't be. And I said, I think I asked, where's dad? She's like, well, my mom was like, well, your father. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, what's going on? She said, well, he started screaming and yelling at the staff and telling them they didn't know what they were doing, and saying that he knew what to do or something because his brother just had the exact same thing, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, my mom was thinking, your brother had a triple bypass because he's never eaten a green in his life, and smokes 3 packs a day, and drinks and eats steak for every meal. Like, this is, and so he just like told everyone that they didn't know what they were doing, and like everyone like fuck off. And then he flew back to New Jersey, only to get in his car to drive right back to the hospital because with personality disorders. And I'm just speculating.
You're just speculating. You're speculating. Speculating.
Shot in the dark.
your years of therapy and counseling. You're just speculating.
There's this thing called, narcissistic supply. And so if you have no one to fuel that gracious characteristic of a personality, then sort of meaning is vacant.
Right.
And so, you need that you got to be the most important person in the room, blah, blah, blah. So that is, and we go through a little thing there. And there was like a moment that he and I had where we like cried a little bit and this and that. And then it just went right back to like, you got to get a job. And I was like, wait, what? Like I could barely hear. I could barely talk, like this whole, and so, and back to, the big question our entire life is, from him, from, I don't know, a single digit age up until, like today is, what have I ever done in your life that's been so wrong? And like, if you ever go to answer, it's like, well, you're wrong. If I were you, I would have said, right. And so, I'm literally a day or two out of a coma, brain damage, moderate brain damage. And he asked that question. and so sometime, well, I'll come back to, so it's time for me to check out of the hospital. And my mother's friend from high school, Donna, um, her and some high school friends meet up every Christmas to kind of like catch up or every, and Donna says, Sharon, what's going on? She says, well, believe it or not, Ryan's in a hospital, OD'd and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to figure out, he doesn't want to go back to Jersey, and I'm trying to figure out, and Donna's a social worker for like 25 years. He's like, do not let him step foot out of the hospital. Do not go against medical advice. If you do so and anything happens to your son from the time you leave to whatever happened, like the accident, like if he falls and gets hurt and needs hospitals, nobody will take him because of the AMA, against medical advice. And so divine intervention, whatever you want to say, her husband, Dr. Al Amendolara, is he's on the board at St. Lawrence Rehab Facility, like 6 miles or 7 miles from my grandmother's house, where I'll be moving back to in New Jersey. And so I am admitted immediately into the traumatic brain unit at St. Lawrence Rehab Facility. And it wasn't until years later that I put together, I mean, it was like 8 years later, and I was like kind of recounting and going through all these things, because when I OD'd, I mean, I kept some of those hospital papers. It was like, because I was thrown in a tub of ice to be, icicled alive. And my temperature went down to like, 93 degrees or whatever, and my heart rate went down to like 20 beats a minute, and my blood pressure was like, I don't know, 60 over 20 or 40 or whatever. And so I wanted to keep, like, as a reminder, and so I was thinking about it, and I asked for my mother for Al and Donna's number to call, and it may have been like I was celebrating like maybe 5 years of sobriety or something like that, and just to thank them, and shortly, I was like I never got a fucking bill for that, so whatever.
So who paid?
So I'm guessing Al, being the, I mean, it may very well have come out of their pockets.
Right. Yeah. That's, yeah.
Yeah. And,
well, walk us through, because you kind of skipped over a whole chunk there. You went right from grandma directly to, hey, I OD'd. So there's a lot in there. Walk us briefly through, and there's a lot you're going to have to like compress into like some moments here, but walk us briefly through the whole like, well, no, I'll frame it this way. People use all kinds of different drugs for all kinds of things. What was that line from what the hell was that movie back in the day? Not Train Spotting, the other drug movie that was good with Jennifer Connelly.
Requiem for a Dream.
There we go. Requiem for a Dream.
Dude, I've seen that one. I will never watch the movie again.
It's too close to. I can't. I watched.
It's not too close, dude. That's.
They can't look at it. You can't look at it. But like the mom in there, she's on her drug of choice, which is TV and speed. Everybody's got their drug of choice. Some people get off on their own sensory perceptions. Some people get off on their own ego and narcissism. Some people get off on sounding smart. Whatever. Everybody's got their own drug. Everybody's got the thing that makes the dopamine receptors in their brain go click, click. Increasingly, we have people addicted to social media. And social media is a dopamine-inducing machine. Let's just watch one more TikTok. Let's just send out one more tweet because I get off on getting people mad at me and the rush that gets, or let's watch one more YouTube video or whatever, right? Netflix binge watching is just another form of addiction. That's all it is. So addiction is not it's not interesting to me from a perspective of we should ban this or we should ban that. Like, I don't care about that. To me, that's infantile.
But it's more about more to it like a spiritual absence than Gabor Mate has written several books and he's on a ton of, he's been on Tim Ferriss's podcast talking about this very thing, and he speaks very eloquently about all of these about the, I guess, misconceptions and kind of dated evaluation or the dated information about addiction.
Right. And so walk us through your experience, because I'm sure it started young.
Yeah, it is a pretty fascinating thing, and I've always wondered how valid this is. And just because you hear validation in a sense in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't necessarily mean that the information just because it's shared is accurate. It could be there could be a groupthink. There could be kind of an auto suggestion because for most people, we like patterns and we want things to make sense.
Right. Yeah.
And which is why I love Albert Camus so much, because absurdism and the whole, that's a different thing. And so
the world is both chaos and order. That's what I would tell Camus. It's both. It's not one or the other.
Well, that's the thing.
And then I would just walk away from him and let him smoke his cigarettes.
Well, I think his response would be like, it is both chaos. I don't think he would. I think he's very welcoming to sort of, at least that's my kind of like perception of his. It's a very laissez-faire sort of. And so I told you about the father thing, and there was that dynamic, and I would say kind of the impetus for a lot of that insecurity and those feelings, because here you go, feelings feels like, I love, feelings aren't facts, fuck them. And so, but it doesn't, it's my friend Michael Mitchell said years ago. He was like, yeah, fear of economic insecurity may have left, but it doesn't fucking make it not real.
Right.
Like, I still need money. Acceptance is, a part of it. The solution isn't acceptance, because otherwise you just, okay, yeah, great, whatever. And so I remember, so there's an element of the confluence of needing to put on some sort of presentation, the aforementioned intelligent, look smart type situation, elements of formative years of being a teenager and being welcomed into, say, a group that I thought was cool. And
that's baseball.
And so, so my freshman year, I primarily hung out with all of my brother's friends. He was a senior. I was a freshman. And so I quickly became good friends with people who were 17, 18 years old when I was, 14, 15.
Yeah.
And that trend really continued, because I have lots of friends who are in their late 40s and 50s now, and even friends in their 60s and 70s. And so, so it's my sophomore year, and Joe Meerherter, who's all-state soccer player, and Danny Baylog, who is a baseball player and soccer player, athletes. They were both like in the top 10 of the class and this and that. And so we go to, we get after practice, we walk to Pathmark, which is a 24-hour grocery store a block from my place in Hamilton, my parents' place in Hamilton. We wait for Joe's mother, who is a pharmacist, to get off work. Joe walks around the store and he's like, we're going to pick up some lemons. And so there's this 15-year-old kid walking around with a bag of lemons. We get the lemons, we get in his mother's van, and we go back to Joe's house. It was a Friday night, and it was in early October, late September. And we were doing shots of tequila. So this was my introduction to alcohol. Yeah. And so up until then, I was like very dogmatic in any nefarious behavior. You know, it was like, if I didn't walk I was going to hell. I'm going to hell. Yeah. The fear of Catholicism. And so we're sitting at Joe's, and
straight edge before it was straight edge before it was cool.
And and I just didn't know. And I was like very like, and so we're doing shots of tequila, lick it, slam it, suck it, lick it, slam it, suck it. After about the third shot of tequila, I remember going into the bathroom to pee, and looking in the mirror, and how foretelling this is. I look in the mirror, and look myself in the eyes, and like until then, there was just like this vibrating insecurity or anxiety that was just coursing through me at all times and whatever. And like, I just remember looking myself in the eyes in the mirror and going, dude, this is what you're going to do. And and that was it. Like, it solved all of my problems. And like, I stayed drunk basically from 15 to 26. And then but I had to maintain the thing, always on the honor roll. All county baseball, like all the things, varsity basketball player, baseball player, just like doing all the things and like living that sort of like dual life. But I mean, by the time I was like 16 or late 16, I had already been, consuming whatever I could within reason, pharmaceuticals, benzodiazepines, Xanax, Valium, painkillers, Vicodin, Percocets. I think 16, New Year's Eve at 16 years old was the first time I did blow. And and it was and like, I didn't want anything to go in my lungs. So like smoking weed, I was like, no, I was like, it's bad for, I'm an athlete. Like, I don't drink soda because it's bad for you. And I don't let smoke come into my lungs because I'm an athlete and I'm better than that. I look down upon anyone who does those sorts of things. And so that, I mean, I started doing LSD at 16 years old. And I mean, just to kind of run through the gamut of all, I mean, when it was all like, by the time I was, say like 22, 23, I mean, I was out of my mind, and you knew.
Oh yeah. By the time I ran into you. Yeah.
It was, and I wasn't necessarily, well, that's not even true. I mean, I wasn't on, I was going to say I wasn't on any hard drugs when we met, but I mean, there was.
Oh, for sure you were.
There was many times where I was at Burlington on heroin or like, and so, but kind of like the last 3 years, and really even to that, I mean, like hundreds of hits of LSD, hundreds of pills of ecstasy, just like, just a complete monster, and while maintaining a daily drinking habit, and and probably the last several years, just for like a maintenance purpose, was smoking pot all the time, and also those like last 3 years, sort of intermittent, IV heroin use and smoking crack on a pretty like I smoked crack on my leisure time. It was like. It was like an act. It was like, do you want to? No, I played basketball on Tuesdays. Like that was like, it was like the equivalent of that. It's like I have this intramural thing I got to do. And
I can't.
And so it was. I mean, I had this conversation last night with someone. I mean, there was always an intent and a purpose behind it, outside of like that feeling of insecurity, the predisposition of. Some mental health issues like depression or OCD, and not getting diagnosed to ADD or AD, whatever that is, until I was like 40 something years old.
Yeah.
And so the underlying pre-existing conditions, and having many a conversation with many a therapist and many a doctor of like, yeah, like all of this stuff sort of always existed in you because we did a very detailed history of my childhood and blah 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 and feelings and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, dude, this is the self-medication aspect of, so there was that element. And there was also an element of like, I want answers. What
Right.
answers? This doesn't make any sense. Like, you walk into a situation, see the flaws and hypocrisy in people's demeanor, behaviors, and words, almost immediately. And it's like, well, this doesn't match up. This doesn't make good sense. And so there was like an element of that as well. So like looking for answers and seeking and that sort of thing until, essentially the amorphous, indefinable pain of whatever was driving my existence, and by that time it was so chemically necessary that it's difficult to tease out the nature,
Yeah.
nurture versus nature aspect of it, and
Yeah.
and so it really like so leading into the there was this last bender that happened before I moved out to North Carolina. OD'd was I had a friend who had tickets to Bonnaroo, and they were like, "Yeah, we're around in Winnebago, and blah blah blah. You want to go?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do this shit!" And all psyched. And in the meantime, Holly and I, we had broken up because we planned. She moved to. She traveled the world for like a year and taught English and lived in East Timor and worked on a thing in Australia and this and that. We were planning on doing it together, but I couldn't get off heroin. So you can't really go to like Australia with a heroin habit.
Doesn't quite work.
Hey, Dingo, do you have any bags of fucking 187 or Dirty Dick? And that's so that's it. So I'm in, and it's this Bonnaroo weekend or whatever, and I cancel that because I get an invitation to a friend's wedding, and I went to high school with, and so that it kept me from getting tickets to that festival. And so I was like, all right. So, and at this time I was painting, and I had this gig down. I was painting down at Seaside and painting this whole house. Had a lot of jobs, getting a lot of money, and I was also working at a liquor store, which is always a good.
That's a good irony. That's good. That's good for a person who's like addicted to alcohol. Let's go work at a liquor store. That seems. And I think that seems like wisdom.
And it's funny because at this time too, I was like, I wanted answers. I wanted solutions. Like I was like, I think I was vegetarian for a while. I was like, because it was like a healthier route. And meanwhile, I was, shooting heroin every day. And so
right.
And so there's always this like weird sort of like the irony of walking into a room and seeing the hypocrisy, and then also
but does that go back to, and I don't know, this is probably an insight you probably have already gotten to like in your experiences, but I'm kind of putting together some things now. Does that go back to the whole like I was straight edge, mainline, dogmatic, and then like, I did the shots, and like that's when my stuff split, and I was like, this is how you're going to handle that, because the dogmatic part is the vegetarianism, the how you're going to handle it is the heroin and working in the liquor store. Is that where those two things overlap?
Possibly.
Okay,
it's a great question. I've never thought of it, but very much like.
Because to be a vegetarian, to be a real legit vegetarian, requires you to have a level of commitment that's almost religious. It is almost a religious.
I'm very disciplined.
Right. Even
when
you need to be. Well, no. Well, I mean, even in describing like how you oriented your drug use, and even in knowing what I knew about you when we first met, like that's disciplined and regimented. Like that's not that part is I would say a net positive. when again oriented towards things that are positive and
behaviorally speaking, is a character potentially
Correct.
Positive characteristic.
Absolutely. And of course, you have to look at outcomes and consequences and behavior and all those things. I'm not taking away any of that. I'm saying, yes, you have to look at all of that. And that through line doesn't really go anywhere. Like it's still there, you know. It just pops out. It just manifests in a bunch of different spots.
Yeah, well, I think it's like that
because you were on time, but you were like on time every day to go to work at the liquor store, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah. I mean, I did a shot. I showed up early. I stayed late. Yeah. Like it was never a work ethic thing, you know.
No, it's that dang. That's the vegetarianism, and then you're going to be on time, and you're going to get some 187 and some dirty dick, and you're going to go have a good time, you know, later on.
Well, because if you take the leg of discipline off that tripod, you just fucking fall on the ground. You know what I mean? Like there has to be. Sure. You know, and so it just but to answer the question about the dogmatic and the regiment, so there was and where it went from like straight edge, this sort of thing, and I didn't necessarily think of it as straight edge, but also when you're, you know, a kid, or like I was 13, 14, 15, I don't really think kind of in those terms, but I understand. Kind of the motivational factor behind it. There's sort of similar the crux of the matter is similar, and so it shares that. So, but like Chappelle's bit in Killing Them Softly, when his white friend is driving and he's in the passenger seat and they're stoned.
Yes.
And he like either blows through a red light or speeds along on this and that, and the cop pulls him over. And what Dave is blown away by is he's like, I'm a black man. This would never even enter my mind to say.
He shakes the cop's hand at the end of the bit.
He says, he goes, the white guy goes, well, you know, you were speeding and you did this and that and whatever. And his white friend, the guy driving, goes, oh, I didn't know you couldn't do that. And it's very similar to the going from nothing to I didn't know you could do this and like become like and maintain the grades or the this or the that, you know what I mean? Like that was the thing, and I didn't know what was you know, it fucked with baseball a lot, because no longer could I differentiate if I liked the game, if I was playing for myself, if this was something that I was it's just so weird, like forced into because of my father, and then pretty quickly, because I was very good. And so
I remember the invitational softball thing that we put together. That was freaking. That was one of the, other than the jazz festival I recently just crushed. Like that's probably one of like the top.
Is that what the images were?
5 or 10 things. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, we got like 1,100 people to show up.
And so I didn't know. You know, I couldn't. I didn't. Everything it muddied everything between the familial dynamic of the father, the drugs and alcohol, and how my father was an amazing baseball coach, actually, to the day. Like he's the best baseball coach I've ever had. But in the same sense, the narcissistic, he very much saw me as an extension of himself. And I was notably better than he ever was. And so when he saw me be successful at this, he absorbed it as his own success.
Right.
As look what I did to, like he
Bring
was
this
swinging
into
the
the
fucking bat,
world. Yeah.
and so, but yeah, I mean,
well, it's a very hard thing. I could talk about this as a parent a little bit. I would say it's very hard. You have to be very clear on where you end and your children begin. You just have to be very clear on that. And, you can protect your children. You can, I fundamentally believe you are called. If you are going to have children, you are called to protect them. That's the whole point of it. Mm-hmm. And by the way, protect them in many cases from you.
You meaning the parent.
You meaning you, the parent, right? Yeah. You're called to establish a relationship with them that allows them to become the best part of themselves that they can become. And when that occurs, and as that occurs, as they mature over the course of time and they discover more things and they become more adept, your job is to get the hell out of their way and let them become the thing that they are going to become. Is this going to always be a thing that you agree with? No. More likely than not, it's going to be a thing that you're going to be like, it's not something I would have chosen. Yeah, that's right, because you're not them. And it's really easy to say that, on a podcast interview in principle. The emotional part of that is the hard part in practice. And, you watch... I watch parents, and I worked in higher education for 20 years. I'm on the back. I'm 9 years on the back end of a higher education career, and like you watch parents all the time come in, and they're living their lives through their kids. And this is where you get at the extreme end helicopter parenting, which is ridiculous. But then at the non-extreme end, or at the other extreme end, I should say, you get the parent who's just like, yeah, I'm going to be up your stuff. Asian tiger mom, and I'm not being racist with that. That's how they refer to themselves. Asian tiger mom, up you all the time. You're going to learn how to play piano. And at a certain point, it's just like whack-a-mole with a human being. And you're not going to get every mole. You're just not. And so I don't know. I would be loath to say that I know how to raise a child. I wouldn't say that. It's a work in progress. And like there's an incident, and I'm not going to get into it today, but like we're working through some stuff with my 5-year-old right now. There's certain behaviors he's exhibiting that like if he doesn't get a hold of them, he won't be able to play well with others and be invited to play. And being invited to play the game is more important than either how he plays it, although that's second important, but being invited to play is first important. Then how you decide to play the game is also important. And considerations of whether or not you win or lose should be tertiary or just non-existent. But he's 5 and he's hyper competitive. So he's driven and he gets real frustrated real easily. And that comes from me. He gets real frustrated real easily when it's not right the first time. So he's got all those dynamics. And I see all of that because it's in myself. And increasingly it comes to me. I have to protect him. My job is to protect him from becoming me, to allow him to become himself. So what that means is I may have to yank his chain a little bit in a loving way and always tell him I love him afterward. But I'm gonna yank your chain. Like something happened last night, and he was like, "That makes me sad, Daddy, and you want to give me a hug?" And I was like, "I know that makes you sad, and I'm sorry it makes you sad. But this is not a hugging moment. We'll hug later, but this is not the hugging moment. Right now, I need you to feel the sadness so that you'll remember things." And then I gave him a hug because I need you to remember this too. And that's a fine line. Because my 11-year-old, totally different freaking person. Like she's submarines. Goes all the way down to the basement. And she'll just look at you. And you can see it in her eyes. You can see the ship just go. She just parks on the bottom and just hangs out there for a week. It's just cogitating. And you're not going to get anything. Whereas my 16-year-old is a lot more like me. She's going to fight. She's a lot more like me. She's going to get up in your face. She's going to fight. She's going to like battle. She's going to brawl. She's going to do all of that because she likes to be right. And she's a dominant individual. And she's going she's going to thrust herself on the world. God help anybody who runs into her. And at a certain point, like my 16-year-old is looking at colleges now, you got to just be like, I've done everything I can, and now I will frame it as a person of faith. You give them to God. God take care of them. You continue to pray for them, but God take care of them, because now they've got to make decisions on their own. They've got to come into their own being. And with that being said, I wonder very often, you talk about your father, and I have a thing with fathers and sons. I wonder very often, because I do believe that our souls go somewhere, and we can, that's an existential discussion for another time. But I do believe our souls go somewhere after this. I don't believe it just ends. And if fundamentally I'm wrong, I don't lose anything. And if fundamentally I'm right, well, I gain everything. So I'm willing to take Pascal's wager. I'm willing to take the upside, or if you're Sam Harris, the downside on that bet. I'll take it.
Sam Harris.
It doesn't hurt me none, Sam. Tell you what, you make your bet, I'll make my bet, and then we'll see each other in the clearing at the end of the path. Or maybe we won't. I don't know. But I do fundamentally believe that is something that particularly men will be called to account for. Like, I think at a certain point your father, maybe not here, but someplace else, will be called to account for that. I don't think you just get away with that, because that's a lot of responsibility right there, a lot of accountability right there. Not necessarily for your decisions, not saying that, nor necessarily for your actions, not even saying that. It's accountability for setting up the dominoes that fell in a certain order. And everybody's life pinballs off of everybody else's life. We are not islands, even though we are individuals, but we are not islands. We do impact other people. And, at a certain point, you are going to be called to account for that. And if it's a fear motivator that causes you to be a better person, fine, take it as a fear motivator. I look at it as a love motivator rather than a fear motivator, but not love in sort of like the touchy-feely, I'm going to give you a hug kind of sense. It's more like love and the empathy and compassion enough, I'll frame it this way, compassion enough to see you as a human being, and compassion enough to give you a hug, and also compassionate enough to show you mercy, and compassionate enough to discipline you when you screw up. And that's all very, very fine lines, and it's all very individualistic. And I'm not giving parenting advice. I'm not talking about what other people should do with their lives or other people should do with their kids. I'm just saying this is something that I've observed, and I see it in the story that you just what you just related to us about your experience.
I mean, the what you just said about 5-year-old.
Yeah.
It's Elijah?
Jeremiah.
Why I always say Elijah? Wrong. Wrong
biblical names.
Wrong biblical.
It's okay.
So,
Elijah had good prophet smack. Jeremiah was the weeping prophet. Elijah did. There's a great story in the Bible where he basically talks smack to the prophets of Baal, and they flog themselves all day and trying to get a stone to light on fire. And he actually says to them, maybe your God is asleep. Maybe you should yell louder. And that's some cold Old Testament prophet stuff.
Is that trolling? Is that
that's an early form of trolling. That's the first troll. And then he walks up and he wets the rocks, and he's like, oh, you want to pour a bucket of water on there? No. Pour 5 on there. Watch this. And then he prays one prayer, and the fire comes out of the sky, kind of like in the Ten Commandments. Fire comes out of the sky, licks up the stone, licks up the water as it's described in the Bible, licks up the stone, licks up the water, licks up the sand, burns and chars everything. And then all of a sudden the prophets of Baal had nothing to say. And he goes, and he drops the mic and leaves.
Mic drop, yeah.
Mic drop, yeah. Now much later on, he gets a woman irritated at him, a woman named Jezebel, and then he goes and hides in a cave somewhere. But that's another thing for another day.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with those Jezebels.
Well, you got to be careful of talking smack, because eventually God's gonna be like, okay, you sure you got that? And here's a little something else.
the interaction you just described with Jeremiah, like that is, I mean, I never like had one interaction, even a fraction of that sort of considerate with my father.
Yeah. And that's where the accountability part comes in. Like that's what I believe. That's what I believe. Men in particular will be held to account for. Yeah, I don't know where, I don't know when, but I firmly believe that.
Yeah. My friend Matthew, he says all the time, if you cheat, you can't win.
There you go.
And oh man, I think it was going to be a father thing, but whatever.
Well, and my relationship with my father was what it was, and there are dynamics there from various behaviors that have lasted with me throughout my entire life. And that is, a lot of those behaviors have not been necessarily always positive, And so, I think I finally saw my parents as people, just human beings, when I turned 30. I was like, oh, and they're not gods. They're not on Mount Rushmore. They're just people. They're just making decisions. And, I go back to the Old Testament, again, the Old Testament admonition to honor your father and your mother. And it doesn't say like them. It doesn't say agree with them. It doesn't even say respect them or love them. It just says honor them. And that word honor is loaded, particularly in our Western culture and in our, as many folks have noted other than me, post-Christian culture. I would call it a revert back to mean of a pagan culture, which is fine. I guess if that's what we want to do as a civilization, I guess that's where we're going to go. Not to say that I won't have something to say about that, but I guess that's where we're going to go. Okay. But if we honor our parents, honor doesn't mean we have to love them or like them or respect them. It means something else. It means something at a higher level. But it also is biblical, and this is in the New Testament, that, parents are called, particularly fathers, are called to not vex their sons and daughters. Don't vex your kids. I think that's a good admonition. But it took like 2,000 years to get there. But I think it's a worthwhile admonition. Honor your parents, absolutely, because that's the one end of the relationship. But then the other end of the relationship is don't set up your children for failure. Don't vex them. And who has the more weight in that situation? Who has the more responsibility there? So yeah, I don't know. It's complicated, and we live in a culture where there's a lot of talk about toxic masculinity, which is another term like privilege that I roundly reject because A, I don't know what it means, and B, when you're talking about masculinity, you're always defining it against something else, like femininity or the feminine. And that's another one of those like that.
Yeah, masculinity means sort of aggression, war, like the more sort of like, and then feminine is beauty, nurturing, soft, blah, blah, blah. And so that doesn't. You're taking two things and conflating them. You're cherry picking.
Well, and it's a Jungian conception. Dare I go to Carl Jung? You talk about Freudian. Let me go Jungian. It's a Jungian conception of two-ness that is kind of not serviceable in the real world where we all live. So, if I am married or if I'm in a relationship, but let's go to marriage just for the sake of whatever. If I'm married to somebody, my biggest negotiations are going to be with that person. And like, those are the ones that I have to establish and maintain based on both of our strengths, and shore up and support, so that both of our weaknesses are addressed, not necessarily by each other, but that they are both addressed and we have the space to address them. Like, my wife can't fix my weaknesses. Just like I can't fix my wife's weaknesses.
Awareness.
Right, awareness.
Yeah. If there's awareness, and so when it's like in real time, if those like that thing is happening, you throwing it back in one's face, if they know it is a weakness that they are working on, right, from the person who you're like, that doesn't, it's counterproductive. And it's just if there wasn't a rift, there is now. And so you're repairing the rift on top of addressing the thing that you are aware and the other person is aware of as a weakness. And so it's like,
it's not a principle that we have, but it is a way that we have argued. Like, my wife and I get in arguments. We discuss things vigorously. We have vigorous fellowship, such as it were. And when we have vigorous fellowship, I do try to make an effort to keep it focused on whatever the topic is at hand, because the temptation is to go, well, you've always been this, and then that's just creating a no-fly zone. And then she's you
did this once, and it's like, wait,
right,
what?
Right, and then the F-22s are going to come out. She doesn't have MiGs; she's got F-22s, and they've got nuclear-tipped, missiles. And then you got to escalate, and then it's just a mess. And so it's not having conflict; it's having conflict in a smart way. And if people have to figure out how to be married to each other before they can start bringing kids into the world. That's critical. And you said your aunt, one of your aunts, got married when she was like 19, and I think in previous generations where people had fewer options for shenanigans, like you talked about going from tequila to all these other kinds of drugs in the space of a decade, right? That's options. Like, you had options. You had a massive level of just a pharmacopoeia of options that just opened up, right? Whereas if you had been around, let's say, in the 1950s, your options are limited. It's weed, maybe, if you can get it. There's heroin floating around, but it's not at scale. Like, you really got to go hunt for it. So you've got beer and cigarettes.
Yeah, and I mean, cocaine was really still. I mean, it was more of a pharmacal. It was more,
yeah. Well, and the drug laws that came out of the early 20th century were designed to limit. Well, they were designed to do two things. Number one, they were designed to keep black men from raping white women in the South. That was the primary thing. That's what all the Southern senators and Southern representatives voted for, removing cocaine from Coca-Cola. Okay, fine, whatever, because of D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. They bought into that whole myth. Yeah, okay, great. Not the last time, by the way, that pop culture influenced public policy. Anyhow. But okay, so let's just take that out. Let's just take that out of the frame for just a minute. But you got that dynamic. But the other place where it popped up was in medicinal. So things like toothpaste and powders and things like aspirin. I mean, all that kind of stuff early. But then over the course of time, people were like, well, it's illegal. Or not people, corporations were like, well, it's illegal. So rather than go through all that hassle, we'll just make this alternative thing here. And you can call that Protestant infantilization of the public or whatever, but that was the move that they went, the direction they went down.
Well, when you can, or and this is a money business savvy. So heroin was initially synthesized by Bayer. Mm-hmm. To give to alcoholics to get them off alcohol.
Okay, that I did not know, but that makes sense.
And so
that's like opioids.
And so you have, I mean, if you look at early 1800 Sears catalogs,
Mm-hmm.
You get, and it was marketed to the wives of farmers in the Midwest. So you have these massive farms, and like agricultural, um, uh, fields, and you have the woman at home, and when the kids have left the building, they're on the
Right.
they're on the farm at what, like 6, 8, 10, and so you have and so they're marketed to these housewives of farmers,
Right.
and now, like, it was one of the sort of most surreal things is kind of doing the history on these things. Like, so you could, through the Sears catalog, for like 18 cents, you could have a needle. You could have a plunger,
Mm-hmm.
with replacement needles,
Mm-hmm.
and like, I don't know if it doesn't matter. I don't know if it's, I think it was either opium or heroin delivered to your house. And it was like, husband's on the farm, home alone, stressed because of X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 have some heroin. And so it's like, and so now, I had this like moment of clarity years ago, and we have all this, it's like the Tom Segura bit, and he's like,
Yeah.
you just draw a circle around the middle of the country. It's like, do we really need this? And so you think about like the evolution of those particular societies.
Well, and there's another dynamic you have to consider, though. We also had, and this is always misremembered or more forgotten, because we live in an era where the guardrails have been pulled out and they are way the hell over in the field somewhere. We had active guardrails then. No matter what you want to think about it, whether those guardrails were right or wrong is another thing over here. We actually had active guardrails back then. So
now, are you talking in the sense of like someone, like a beat cop?
No.
Like
that's downstream. No, I'm talking like upstream guardrails. I'm talking
Okay.
about like that farm woman who was getting that syringe out of a Sears catalog to use heroin to relieve her boredom when her husband was farming for 8 hours by hand. That woman was still showing up and going to church every Sunday because the society said show up and go to church every Sunday. There were still Protestant revivalism, and actually Protestant revivalism was huge in the late 20th and early 21st, or not 21st, but the late 19th and early 20th century. Maybe not necessarily because of that, but because that's what you culturally did. The guardrail around, not the guardrails, but the boundaries, and this is where racism then kicks in. The boundaries around black and white were firmly being enforced. The boundaries around men and women were firmly being enforced by the society and culture. What we've done consistently since the 1950s, I don't blame it on the 60s, it actually started in the 50s, is we've pulled out those guardrails in an attempt to, I believe, fundamentally worship freedom, which is our God. And when you go to freedom all the way to its furthest end, you're going to get an opioid epidemic because it's freedom. But you're also going to get like people who want to change their gender. You're going to get all of that. It's all in there together because the guardrails of social control, whether you agree with where those guardrails came from or not is an irrelevancy. The guardrails of social control are just not. They're not there. I'll go all the way. They're not there. They're just not.
Well, and the freedom,
and they also don't have the cultural power that they used to have. And so cultural power is huge. So politics and the beat cop, that's all downstream from culture. The Irish Catholic Paddy cop that's busting your head because you have drugs, he's only busting your head because you have drugs because of the culture tells him he can do it.
So I mean in the sense of like the positive aspects of having a beat cop, the positive aspects of having a cop who you engage with
absolutely.
Everyone in the neighborhood.
For sure, yeah.
And it's like, I just think, God, I can't think of his name. He's such a tremendous actor in Clockers.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking
The
about.
cop who's like, "Hey, I got this
Yes.
tumbling cup for my kids.
Yes.
I need mattresses. Are you gonna buy some?" And so like he's like, "I know your mother.
Right. Yeah.
Get your ass home." And so
Well,
you have this engagement in a way where it's like, "Oh, I'm part of the community. I am not this outsider coming into this thing and telling you what's right and wrong. I also live here." And I'm saying, like, dude, like this shit doesn't fly.
This doesn't fly. Yeah. Well, you saw this in the movie On the Waterfront. So in the movie On the Waterfront, where Marlon Brando is, fighting against, well, not fighting, but like he's, part of the folks who are on the waterfront moving boxes or whatever, moving cargo, and his brother's running the mob.
Keith David.
Right. And Keith David. And you've got the parish priest played by, what's his name? I can't remember the actor's name right now, but the parish priest comes down there. And the parish priest is like, number one, your brother's a criminal. He's always been a criminal. And I tried to get him, but I couldn't help him. And now you're going down the road to being a criminal. And so this is, again, an example of that cultural push. You're going down the road to being a criminal. And now I'm going to put guardrails on you. And yes, there are some things that are happening down here that are actually structurally wrong in the waterfront. And we're going to fix those. I would assert that because of where we are at now in 2022, with the fragmentation of, you talk about ADD, the fragmentation of attention, the fragmentation of audiences, the fragmentation of culture. Everybody could pick their own culture that they want now, and they don't really have to apologize. Again, that's freedom taken to its logical end. If you like that and it's working for you because you get to define who you are, and you don't really care too much about boundaries or guardrails, or you look at those as an impediment, then this is all well and good. This is a candy-coated world. This is great. If you're a person who goes, and Bill Maher is starting to get there a little bit on this, if you watch some of his stuff recently, maybe we shouldn't talk to 3-year-olds about their sexuality. Maybe that's a step too far. Maybe, like, and that's a guy, by the way, who actively was participating in pulling up guardrails not but 10 years ago.
So I want to bring another element to the equation in the freedom sense. And there has been an enormous advancement jump in the freedom of wealth from the poorest communities to now. So what is, so are there, for instance, are there Black families who live in lower income neighborhoods talking to their children about their sexual identity
in lower income neighborhoods?
Yeah. Like, is it, how much of that is an extension of wealth in the sense of, like, I got enough, like, I'm so free and I have enough financial freedom that I really don't have any problem. So I'm going to, like, I need something to attach to because I'm spiritually bankrupt because we don't have those
guardrails. Yeah.
Those guardrails. And so now it's, and so I guess how this is not an original thought. I was watching or reading something along the lines of, there was in culture in Egypt, and there was also at the height of wealth in India and also Egypt, there was a lot of this, like, gender dysmorphia or this gender reassignment, or these things were happening, but it was only really at the height of the wealth of these societies. And so it's like when you hear people say, I'm only keto or I'm vegan, and it's like, dude, that's not a problem.
Right.
Like the woman who came into the coffee shop one time, and there was like the equivalent of, say, like a tablespoon or two of honey, doesn't matter how much, on, like, made by glaze with orange juice and honey, brushed atop these, like, energy bars. And so the lady was like, wait, there's honey in here. They're not vegan. And I said, my sincerest apologies. I'll change the sign immediately. And she goes, people have diet restrictions and health things and blah. And I was thinking like, veganism that's not a diet. That's not a health. Like you're not allergic to not being a vegan. You know what I mean? So like,
and I'm going to pause it right there,
yeah.
and we're going to come back.